Well, welcome. I'm Bill Roach. I chair the Environment Committee, and we're really pleased tonight to have a real pro in Heather Trim, who is the Executive Director of the Zero Waste Washington. And she has been in that role since 2016. I could do a long background, but we won't do that. It's very impressive, but we'll just leave it at that. She and her nonprofit organization have been particularly effective with the Washington State Legislature. This year, they've been able to persuade the legislature to pass 13 separate bills addressing many aspects of reducing waste. Number one on the list is the Recycling Reform Act, which you'll get into in some detail, and the Right to Repair bill. There are two Right to Repair bills, which is another thing she will be covering. And we've asked, we will ask you to hold your questions until she's finished. We want to give you plenty of time to ask questions, and I'm sure you will. But let's give her a few minutes. Heather.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to turn this up. There we go. Great. Hi, everybody. I'm Heather Trim. I'm Executive Director of Zero Waste Washington. And those 13 bills were all with other people. So it was all in partnership, just to be clear. So if you've never heard of us, we are a statewide nonprofit, and our goal is to make trash obsolete. We do this through working on policy, so mainly trying to get laws passed in the state level in Olympia, but also we do research projects and we do pilot projects. And zero waste is a very large topic. Things that you might not think about. So toxic chemicals in products, repair and reuse, excess packaging, you'd think of that. Innovation, one of our big problems going to the landfill is diapers. Plastic pollution, recycling, and then producer responsibilities. So the top left, those are cell phones. And producer responsibility is where the manufacturers and brands pay for the end of life. And that was our first bill back in 2006. E-waste, so electronic waste, is paid for to be recycled in Washington by HP and Microsoft and all the companies. So just a little sideshow first on recent bills in case you're not aware. In 2018, Representative Strom Peterson, who's from Snohomish County, led the charge on this great bill. It took 10 years to get this passed, and it was the first in the country. Very exciting. So if you have leftover medicine in your medicine cabinet or in storage, you can take that back to, you go online and you look for Med Project, and you can find a pharmacy, a sheriff's office, or a hospital near you. Do you have a take back here in the building? No. Oh, gone. Okay, but is there one nearby? Okay. Hospitals, yeah. So when you go to the doctor, and anyway, it's paid for by the pharmaceutical industry, and now several other states, many other states, have passed the same law. And the reason that we supported the law was for environmental purposes. We wanted to not have people flush the drugs down the toilet and go into the waterways, but it's actually also for the opioid crisis and suicide prevention and poison prevention, and that's actually the reasons why the bill got passed. Another similar bill is paint. So if you have leftover paint in your storeroom or garage or wherever, now, and this was also led by Strom Peterson, you can take these back and get them recycled. The latex paint is very, very recyclable, and that's called Paint Care. And again, you can find hardware stores and paint stores who will take back paint. And then the most recent example is batteries. So if you have leftover batteries, hang on to them for now. This law passed in 2023, and it was led by Senator Derek Stanford and Rep. Chapalo Street. It is a fabulous bill, best in the nation. And it will start in 2026, so next year, and it will take all battery chemistries, so not just rechargeable batteries, but all batteries will be able to be recycled, paid for by the battery industry. So that'll start in 2026. So that was a little sideshow before I got into the main program. So I'm going to start with a little bit of zero waste tips. Then I'm going to go into, mainly, I'm going to talk about legislative action, bills that have just passed, and next year. And then we'll talk also about other zero waste activities that we do. So people ask me all the time, what can I do to be someone who does a good job on zero waste? And the number one thing I say is don't buy it in the first place, because the biggest impact is the manufacture and extraction of things in the first place. And if you don't have to buy it, don't buy it. Borrow from the neighbor, borrow from a tool library, borrow from a friend, and especially if you have cell phones, keep your cell phones more years. You don't need the fanciest new cell phone, right? So hang on to your cell phone, because it's a big impact when you have the new products. The second thing is to bring your own. So bring your own mug, bring your own water container, bring your own bag. Use real glasses in the dining room, which you do. Not all that disposable, because all those disposable single-use plastics are really, really bad for the environment from a multitude of ways. But it's easy to bring your own from an impact component. And then lastly of these, it's important to recycle carefully. Styrofoam should not go in the recycle bin, period. Do not put it in the recycle bin, because it breaks up into little pieces and then it gets all over everything and it contaminates everything. And then if you have plastic wrap or plastic bags, they do not go in the blue bin either, because, and this is called the waterfall at the recycling facility. So in where they're sorting the recyclables, they have these big rollers, these huge metal rollers, and all the plastics wrap around the rollers tight. And about 1 hour out of every 8-hour shift, they have to go in with blades. They have to stop the line and then go in with blades and drills and cut all the plastic off. It's very dangerous for the workers, and it loses an hour of work time. So don't put any plastic wrap. So plastic bags, plastic chip bags, none of that should go. Okay, and then lastly, clothing. So you really, really, really want to try to make your clothing last as long as possible. And one of the big ways to do that is to use cold water and to not wash your clothes that often. I have to admit that when I was younger, I wore things and I put it in the laundry and I washed things. I never wore things more than once. Now, I wear things a long time before I wash them. You don't need to wash things. It wears down your clothing, and it also uses a lot of energy. The other issue is fast fashion and all of this too much clothing that everybody has. Going shopping just for the sport of it, etc. So this is a photo of Chile, where they have up in the mountains these huge piles of clothing that no one wants. So it's come from America to Chile, in theory, to be sold there. Not enough happening. And there's just piles of clothing, textiles, all this extra stuff we have. There's fast fashion, if you're not familiar with it, is where you can buy something like a T-shirt online for $2. And the T-shirt doesn't last. It falls apart after a few washings. And it's terrible from the environment, from the point of view of making it, but it also is just doesn't make sense economically. You're going to go buy another T-shirt. All right, and then finally, I just want to talk about plastic in the human body. There's been a lot of new research in the last 3 years about where they're finding plastic in humans. So this is a new study. It came out in February from the University of New Mexico. And they were taking brain samples over from 2016 to 2024, people who died between 2016 and 2024. And they also looked at brains that they had from, I think, the 80s or 70s. So they had two different time periods of brains. And they found in the more recent brains up to a spoonful, so a plastic spoon amount of brain particles in the brains. And they didn't find as much plastic in the older brains, the brains from people who died before. This is an article from the Smithsonian, and this is a quote from, or I drew this from it. Basically, they found that in the last 8 years, so that's between 2016 and 2024, that the brain particles had doubled. And that they're saying that this matches the context that plastics in our culture has doubled roughly every 10 to 15 years. So we have more and more and more plastic in our lives. And I'm sure you all have experienced this, right? So this is something that we are really trying to tackle. We've got to reduce plastic in our daily lives. We just have to do it. Okay, so Bill asked me to focus on legislative work. This is a photo that I took about a month ago in Olympia. Look how beautiful the cherry blossoms were there. And here are not all 13, but some of the bigger bills that were successfully passed out of the legislature. So as you may know, the legislature ended last night, Sunday night, and now the governor has 20 days to sign all the bills. 20 days from when he received them. So I'm going to talk about the bulk of these bills, so you don't need to remember these. I'm going to talk about them in a minute, but just to give you an idea of the breadth. And then I'm not going to talk about some of the defense, but when you do legislative work in Olympia, you do also have to do defense or small bills to sort of fix things. Okay, so the big bill, which is very exciting, it took 6 years to get this bill passed, is the Recycling Reform Act. And it was led by Representative Liz Berry, who's with the 36th District in Seattle. So some of you may know her. And then Senator Liz Lovelet, who's from Anacortes. And they were the two Liz's, and they call themselves the two lizards. So the two lizards. And this is the photo is the press event that we did on January 16th. And we used a Seattle recycling bin as the podium for the press event. And it was really fun. So anyway, the two lizards worked really, really hard on this bill. They were so amazing as legislators on this bill. And we're very excited, and I'm explaining to you what the bill does. But overall, in summary, what the bill does is it completely revamps our recycling system in Washington, and it modernizes our recycling system. So that's the bottom line, but I'm going to tell you a little detail here. Okay, so we are so you can see there's 6 states that have already passed this law. So Maine, Oregon, Colorado, California, Minnesota, and then 3 weeks ago, Maryland. And now we are number 7. We would have liked to have been number 1, but, you know, that's how it goes. We're thrilled to be number 7. And what it is it's a revamp where the manufacturers and the brands will pay for the recycling system in Washington, 90% of the cost. And so it's a true circular economy kind of concept. I'm giving you kind of a quick version tonight. Happy to answer more questions in the Q&A. One of the situations we have in Washington right now is that we don't have access to recycling that's equal across the state. So in the Teal area, the Puget Sound area, 100% of the residents do have access to recycling. But you can see that in eastern Washington and other parts of the state, we don't have that access. This bill will bring recycling, curbside recycling, to every resident, single family or multifamily, so apartments and condos and things, across the state, if they have garbage pickup right now. So if they have garbage pickup, they'll get recycling pickup curbside. There are some places that are in the mountains where they don't have garbage pickup, so that's why I qualify it that way. There are 11 counties right now that don't have curbside recycling, mostly in eastern Washington. It also, right now, we have a problem. everywhere you go, different cities all have a different list of what you can put in the recycle bin. This will be one list across the entire state. So everywhere you go, it'll be the same list, and that list will only be things that can actually be recycled. So if you're putting something in the blue bin here, you will know that it is actually going to be recycled, and you can trust the system again. People have lost trust in the recycling system right now. So we're trying to fix that. And then right now there's a lot of concern, like what is really happening with our recyclables? This will fix that. All of the where things are going will have to be reported. Right now we have very little transparency. We aren't sure where things are going. We're not sure they're not going to some other country and becoming a dump. They find, Trader Joe, in Southeast Asia, they find trash that says Trader Joe's or whatever, American brands they find. So the bill is going to include targets, but not in statute. The targets will be developed for plastic reduction. So this was very important to the environmental community, that we had a plastic reduction target that will be part of this. A recycling target, a return target, and a reuse target. So by reuse, what we mean is that reusable glass Coke bottles, for example. This is a photo from UK where they are now doing a pilot of refillable Coke bottles. So all of you from your childhood, and me from my childhood, remember we had refillable soda bottles. And that is so much better than having the single-use plastic. So there's going to be a reuse target that will be set up for the state. It's going to start small, but it will build over time, because we have virtually no reuse right now in our culture, right, in Washington. And then it's going to set up at the bottom here a fund for reuse, $5 million a year for infrastructure, so building the system that will be able to do reuse, and that will go up with inflation. So the benefits of the bill overall, from an environmental point of view, and I realize these are teeny font. I'm sorry about the small font, so I'll read it to you. So it's going to, the first photo, which is the mountains, it's going to reduce emissions and improve our environment. I can barely read it over here, by increasing our reuse and recycling rates and plastic source reductions. That's what I mentioned before, reducing plastic. Number two, the middle there, it's going to make it easy to recycle. Right now it is difficult. By increasing access, so almost everyone will have access, and it will include apartments and condos, and a lot more education. The education will be the same across the state. And then over on the right there, it's going to reduce confusion and contamination by developing a clear, common list, one list of what can be put in the recycle bin, and only things that can be recycled. The money one here is going to save local governments and residents money by covering 90% of the costs of the recycling program, paid for by the brands. And then it's going to support jobs, which is the middle one there. So it's going to bring a lot more trucks, a lot more recycling, a lot more jobs to the state. And then finally, it creates, on the bottom there, it creates incentives, financial incentives for the brands to reduce the packaging, so you get less packaging. Okay, and now, that's readable, right? Yeah. Okay, so the current system is shown in orange, and the new system, once it's in place, is shown in green. So the top thing is it's going to bring recycling. Right now, 2.8 million residents, households have access. It'll be 3.2 million that'll have access after greater than 95%. The recycling rate, which is today 40% for these products that come to your home, will increase to 66% by 2032 based on the modeling. The tons recycled will go up a lot, and the pounds per household will go up a lot. And then the costs right now, residents are paying $60 to $300 a year for recycling. It'll be a 90% savings on that, and then we'll have a greenhouse gas improvement, and then we'll also have a jobs improvement. So those are the benefits of this bill. Now, as was implied and not said, but This was supported by a lot of people. So I know you can't read this, but these are some of the logos, not all, of the groups that were part of the coalition that ultimately got this passed. So it took 6 years, and it was pretty cool that it got passed. Very exciting night at 2:15 a.m. 2 weeks ago when it finally made it off of the House floor. So that was exciting, but and that took 6 years. This bill took 8 years. You have to have a long, thick skin to do legislative work in Olympia. So this bill is this is like my favorite bill, actually. So this was led by Senator Derek Stanford and Rep. Mia Gregerson. It was really Mia Gregerson who did the bulk of the work on this. This is right to repair. And what this is the brands are going to now have to provide to you, the public, and to the independent repair shops for electronic devices and for appliances. Think how expensive it is to repair a fridge, right? The parts, the tools, and the specifications at cost. Right now, this is deeply clinched, not allowed out to people. So this is going to mean that you can get your cell phone repaired with an Apple battery as opposed to an aftermarket, not Apple battery, at cost. And an independent repair shop, the guy or woman down the corner can fix it for you. Right now, this is all very restricted, more restricted than you know, really bad. So this is a really big deal. So this is going to be for electronics and appliances. And what changed this year? Why did it take 8 years? What changed is Google and Microsoft came on board. And they've had a lot of pressure from the public, Google especially, to have to change to do repair, allow this. And what was the block? The block was Apple. Apple blocked it for Apple blocked it all the way up until this year. Apple was the block. And this year, things are changing. They're seeing the writing on the wall. But Apple, we eventually took a part of what they wanted, part of their amendment, and that got them to yes, or rather, it got them to neutral. And here is the day that it was, like, we were blown away. So this is March 4th when it passed out of the House, and you can see the vote was, I know it's hard to read, 94-1. We don't get that many bills that are 94-1 in the environmental world. So that was very exciting day. And then here we were out right after the vote. So this is me and Mia Gregerson and the main contract lobbyist who worked on it, Craig. So very exciting moment when that happened. Okay, now Rep. Gregerson, who is terrific, also championed a new bill this year that passed in 1 year. So this is Rep. Gregerson over here, and this is Senator Drew Hansen, who's from Bainbridge. Interestingly, it's the Drew Hansen bill that actually is the formal bill. So it's the Senate bill that made it. But it was really Gregerson who did all the work. So here's Rep. Gregerson with Marcia Cutting, who is from Bainbridge, who I worked very closely with, and it was really driven by the wheelchair users. And we're talking power wheelchairs. Her wheelchair cost $37,000. And this will not be a surprise to some of you, but it's like, whoa, $37 for this wheelchair? And then to get repaired, she sometimes, people, not just her, people in wheelchairs and other mobility devices have to sometimes wait up to 2 months to get a simple little part, like a button or a cord, really nothing things. But because of the restrictive nature of the system, they couldn't get the button. This one person testified her son is in a power wheelchair, and they finally, they couldn't get it. They needed a cord. They finally got the cord on eBay for $2.97. So they found someone who had who was taking apart a wheelchair and gave them that. They could sell them that part for $2.97. That is how bad this is. This bill was fought and is still being fought, and we still need to get this signed by the governor, by the industry. They want it to be controlled. They don't want you to have us to have access to the parts. So the guy on the right, he does volunteer events where people can bring in their wheelchair, and what he does, and there's some other volunteer events, like there's one guy in Yakima. They scavenge from old wheelchairs to have the parts, instead of being able to get access to the parts. Anyway, this bill passed, but we were worried. So here are some of the wheelchair users in a, not really a rally, a visibility event in Olympia. And then what we did is we all wheeled over, not me, but I followed them, over to the legislature, and we couldn't get the legislator to come out to talk to us because they were in caucus. But we did get a photo of everybody outside the door of the Democrat side of the House. That's what this is. And then we went into the hearing. And let me tell you, how many is this? Like 20 wheelchairs wheeling in. And they had to take out the front row of seats. This was very effective. So this is at the break, but they were all lined up. So looking at the legislators, because we had trouble with some of the legislators on this committee, Democrat legislators. But let's just say that being there in person, giving them the eye, made a big difference. And Rep. Gregerson, see, she came down. She's not on that committee, so she came down. There she is in the middle there with her hand. So it was very exciting when this bill passed. And it passed with 94-1. Or was it unanimous? I can't remember, but close to unanimous, if it wasn't unanimous. So that was super cool. Okay, less cool bills, but necessary bills, is our compost bill. So this was led by Rep. Dolio, who's from Olympia. And this is the third of 3 bills related to trying to get our compost system better in this state. So this one is a smaller bill, but it's important. So the first thing is so that we have, it's going to require standard bin colors. So black or gray for landfill, blue for recycling, and green or brown for compost. Now, I picked this photo deliberately because you can see there's a yellow bin. Why is there a yellow bin? Well, the yellow bin is because if we want to do glass on the side, it needs to be a different color. And glass may need to be on the side to clean up our recycling. So that's why I showed that photo. But actually, the more important part of this bill is it's going to require that all bins inside and outside in every place, so your building, every place, an industry, commercial, residential, is going to have to be labeled, whether it's recycle, compost, or landfill, and color-coded blue for that. You would be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't be surprised, how many places the bins are not labeled and not labeled clearly. So that's going to be required. And then also, it's going to require that multifamily buildings need to be offering compost, or having compost be what they offer to their residents. That's going to happen over time. Okay, this bill is PFAS, which is the forever chemical. It's the chemical that's like in Gore-Tex or the nonstick pans. It is a very toxic chemical. If you have nonstick pans, you should get rid of them if they have that plastic coating on them. And but this is the problem we have is that PFAS, which is polyfluorinated chemicals, are, and a family of chemicals, are getting into our biosolids or sludge. So at the wastewater treatment plant, you have the water from our toilets and our sinks going there. The water goes out, but the solids go down to the bottom. They precipitate to the bottom. And that's where the toxic chemicals attach. And then those biosolids are minimally treated, processed, that's a better word. Process is a better word, because I would not call it treated. Anyway, not getting rid of the PFAS. And then the biosolids are sprayed, and you can see this is a farm, so it's pretty liquid. They're spraying it on farms and forests, and it builds up in these places. It doesn't break down, so it builds up. This is a big problem. These are toxic chemicals that are going essentially into our environment. And in other states like Maine and Minnesota and Michigan, they have had much more dramatic legislation than we have so far. There was a movie with Mark Ruffalo what was that movie? Can't remember. A few years back, about the situation. I think it was, anyway, where the cows were dying in the farms next to the plant. Oof, I can't remember. Dark water. Dark water? Does that ring a bell? Yeah. Anyway, this bill was led by a Republican. So this is Senator Jeff Wilson. And here is Senator Jeff Wilson testifying on that bill on March 7. I was up in the gallery, and that's him right here, the lower guy. He was sponsoring this bill because the farmers are so upset that we are doing this in this state. Across the world, by the way, not just Washington. So this is going to require testing of the biosolids so we can see if we have a little problem, a medium-sized problem, or a really bad problem. That's what this bill will do. Okay, another wonky policy bill, very wonky but very important, was led by Liz Lovett in the Senate, and particularly led and did all the work Representative Davina Dewar from the Bothell area. And what this is we have refrigerant gases that are in air conditioning units and appliances, and then also in the HVAC systems, like on the top of a office building, or our apple warehouses or our potato warehouses, big, huge HVAC systems to cool the warehouses. And this gas, these refrigerant gases, are extraordinarily more potent than CO2. So you can see CO2 here, but you can see orders of magnitude more potent as greenhouse gases. We have got to be very careful with these gases. So there are international treaties that are banning the sale of new gases. They're not going to be available. They will not be manufactured because of these international treaties, and these can't be undone by Washington, D.C. So we're going to have a shortage of these gases. So what this bill does is it basically sets in place a reclamation incentive so that if you're a technician and you're going to repair one of these systems, you will not vent it to the atmosphere. You will preserve it so it can be cleaned and reused. There wasn't a lot of incentive for technicians to not let it vent. And of course, it's really bad for the environment. So that's what that bill does. And then finally, a litter bill. This is also, this is Rep. Mark Clicker, a Republican. And this, you would think, it's sort of weird, but we haven't increased our we haven't had a litter bill for 15 years in Washington. And the litter is getting worse and worse out there. Now, Zero Waste Washington, we want to turn off the tap. We don't want to have things that are being littered. But since we do have litter, we need to make sure there's an incentive for people not to litter. If you drive into Oregon, the first thing you see is a big sign that says up to $6,250 fine for littering. And every rest area has that big sign. Washington, although I've been told we used to have a big sign, we don't anymore. But our fines are not anything near that. So this was to increase the fines, and this did pass unanimously. Okay, so this summarizes what I just talked about, and I'm happy to answer any questions about these as we get into Q&A. But then I wanted to talk a little bit about what we're going to do next year. So yes, it's the day after the legislative session ended yesterday, but why not think about next year? So and really mainly because these bills didn't advance. And when you're working in Olympia on bills, usually you cannot get a bill passed in 1 year, a big bill. It usually takes a couple of years. So you have what's called a first-year bill. So that's what most of these were. They were first-year bills with the intent to get the conversation started, but not necessarily to get them all the way over the finish line. So the first one is textile recycling. This, as I mentioned before, huge problem, big environmental impact. What I didn't say is the clothing industry, because of the dyes, is one of the, if not the largest water pollution industry in the world. And I can't remember if it's number 1 or number 3, but it's like really, really up there. So not only do we have the extraction, all the making of the, extracting the plastic or cotton, all the different impacts, and the waste impacts, it is a very badly polluting industry. Plus, it has very significant labor issues as well in other countries. So this bill was started this year. It had a really good hearing. So we want that to maybe go over the finish line next year. That's our hope. That's where the manufacturers would pay for the end of life of the textiles, clothing. So for example, reuse, repair, repurposing, and then recycling. Let's really help get things better reused or reduce. That's what we really want to do, like not have as much. Second thing is mattresses. Mattresses are a huge part of landfills. Crazy that they're going to the landfill because they are very recyclable. Everything is recyclable except for one little part of mattresses. And then I added this one this morning, cannabis. So we have a problem with cannabis packaging in this state. So this would help reduce the packaging barriers that we have right now, and I could explain more about that if you ask. But it is sort of surprising how much unnecessary packaging. And when we do cleanups, litter cleanups, we see a lot of all that excess cannabis packaging out there. EV batteries. So as you know, we have more and more and more EV cars and vehicles, and those have in them critical minerals. So lithium, cadmium, nickel, that are, from an American security perspective, very important. And you've seen that in the news, even in the past week, about China. So, for example, lithium, and I'm a geologist, so I'll be happy to tell you anything you want to know about these things. I worked on lithium as one of my things. It's actually a very abundant mineral in the metal in the world, but it's in tiny amounts. And the number one place where they process lithium into quantities you can use is China. So we need to recycle the EV batteries. We just absolutely must do that. We need to be extracting those minerals, and we also need to be sure that we're handling them safely because they can cause pretty serious fires. And then a bottle bill. So we really want a bottle bill. We did work on it last year and this year, but now we can get serious about it. And then not that big a deal thing, more of a wonky thing, but we need more money to go to the state to pay for the drug take-back program. So that's looking ahead to next year so far. So we'll see what else comes up on the list over the summer. All right, other zero waste action. So one thing we're trying to do is we're trying to reduce the amount of plastic and single-use stuff at schools, K through 12 schools. And so if you see the photo at the bottom, unfortunately a lot of schools have a ton of plastic that they're giving the kids. So we're trying to get to, stainless steel trays, reusable trays, real forks, things like that. And in particular, we're working on milk. We have a grant that we got from King County, so we're working with King County schools to try to put in milk dispensers so you could just get your milk in a glass and not have those cartons. The cartons are not recyclable in our system. And the milk tastes so much better if it's coming out of a dispenser and not a carton. What do you guys have here? Oh, you have cartons? What? You should not have cartons here. I'm looking at Bill. That's an easy fix. That is such an easy fix. The milk tastes so much better if it's not in the cartons. It lasts longer. I know I'm talking Bill into it. Okay. Furniture. So you would be amazed at how much furniture is going to the landfill right now. This is the transfer station, I think in Seattle, and in the middle in that photo is Xenia Dolovova, who's the lead on this project. So what we're doing is we're taking furniture that is destined for the landfill. It's damaged, it might have water damage, it might have a missing shelf or a missing wheel, and we're using volunteers to repair it. So this is Xenia in Tacoma at the Tacoma transfer station on a day that we were collecting furniture that was on the way into the landfill. And you'll see that same chair again in a minute. So then we have volunteers who are helping do reupholstering, volunteer wood makers who are helping repair the wood that is usually a pretty easy fix. We're doing sanding and staining. We actually had to move our office into a warehouse so we could actually do on-the-ground operations. So we are no longer in downtown Seattle. We moved to Sodo in a warehouse. This is our new office. Our office is in the back. So these are volunteers doing repair and sprucing. That chair that I mentioned before, there it is. So I've obscured the so you can't identify who the folks are. But these are primarily recent immigrants and refugee families who are given apartments and a little bit of assistance from the resettlement agencies, but not furniture. And so furniture is really important. And we're bringing the furniture back to like new. I mean, it looks great, or sometimes even better than new. So here's another family that got a whole ton of furniture. And here are some before and after photos. So this is a beat up old bureau that is now all spruced up and nice. And this is one I personally worked on, me and other people. So the original was a dark wood, dark stain. The new one, the revised one, I personally think it looks better than the original because you can really see the wood, the grain, everything. Anyway, see how nice that is? Here we purchased a very expensive sewing tool, so you can repair upholstery like that, which you can't really do with a regular sewing machine. So there's a upholstery repair. Here is a situation where we had a bed, headboard and backboard, and then we had a futon that didn't really have much, and this didn't have the slats, and this had to be repaired. The leg was broken. So then we have a bed that came out of all that. Here's another one that I personally worked on. This was a kind of probably cute set when it was first done, but it came in very bad shape. This had a broken leg, and now it's like got this tropical feel to it. Another beat up bureau that became a spruced up bureau, etc. So Xenia is now going to become her own 501c3. So we have spawned off a new nonprofit, the Furniture Repair Bank, and it's really a cool project. And she's now working with the city of Seattle at the landfill. So as trucks are going into the transfer station, they have an event about, I think, once a week where they're intercepting the trucks and say, do you have any furniture? Bring it to us. So very direct diversion from the landfill. Okay, then next to last slide. We are working on trying to get toxic chemicals out of products. And doing events in the community, which we're going to start this summer, where we are giving people like if they have a rice cooker, for example, and the rice cooker has a non-stick pan that is that perfluorinated PFAS, that chemical I mentioned before, PFAS, we'll give them they bring in their rice cooker, we'll give them a replacement one that is PFAS free. So we're going to be doing that starting this summer. We've got a big federal grant, so hopefully that will stick. And then lastly, farm waste. Farm waste is kind of unbelievable how much plastic there is. And we interviewed a bunch of farmers in King County and Snohomish and Pearson, the 4-county area here, to find out what were their big problem areas. And then right now, as in over the weekend and last Friday, we've been ordering the products to do pilot projects with farmers to test CSA boxes. So you know CSA is the box you can get weekly from a farmer. We're testing reusable ones of those, and we're also testing nursery trays with them. So this project is like now, the month of May, April, May. So that's pretty cool. And now I think we have time for a few questions. Okay, great, we're doing well. Okay.
How about the other one? Does it work?
The other one he
took.
away. Yeah. Any questions? There's one in the back.
Thank you for your presentation. It was very helpful. When I go to the store, I try not to buy anything wrapped in plastic. I try not to buy anything that has plastic inside of it. And you know, these companies are going more and more to plastic, where they used to use wax paper. So it's really a constant vigilance. Like Trader Joe's is hopeless. It's constant vigilance. But even so, I'm drowning in plastic bags.
Right.
What do you do with all those plastic bags?
Well, first off, to just answer your bigger point, which is it's getting worse. The bill that we just passed, if the governor signs it, will help put a stop to that, because the manufacturers are going to be in a very strongly incentivized role to only give us things that are recyclable, which means a lot of that wrap is not going to be in the list, because that wrap is not recyclable in our system. So what I do with plastic bags, for starters, is I hoard them because we have so few now because we banned plastic bags. But paper bags, so if you can get the paper bags, of course, if you're at checkout, or really bring your own, so on the back, the take home. But in terms of the plastic bread bags and the plastic, all those bags, if they're like a bread bag and you can punch it with your thumb and it will give a little bit, so not a Dorito bag, it will not give, but a bread bag will give. You can do take back at grocery stores and Fred Meyer's and things like that. Those are then going to a place in Reno, Trek, and making Trek lumber, that, that plastic lumber, which didn't used to be that good a quality. It is now better quality, and it does last a long time. Not the most wonderful solution in the world, but at least it is a solution. But our goal is to just reverse that. We also, I should have mentioned, we plan to, oh, I forgot that on my list for next year. We plan to do a bag ban for next year. Whoops. Okay. So yeah, we are going to try to get plastic bags banned in this state. Period.
Not the idea of single use, because you know what happened with that.
Right.
It just gave us multiple use plastic bags.
Right. Well, that was the best we could do, and that was, in 2020. We now want to go to the bill we really want. Yeah. So I can't believe I forgot that on our list. Anyway, plastic bag take-home ban is next on our big bill, one of our big bills for next year. Yeah. Yeah, it's a problem. Yeah. Do you want me to repeat the questions, or it's okay? Okay.
When I had a house, I subscribed to Ridwell.
Uh-huh.
And what is your opinion of the effectiveness of what they are doing?
Well, okay, so for people who don't know, Ridwell is a service that came out of Seattle. In fact, my neighbor is the person who founded Ridwell, half a block away. So Ridwell is a service that comes to your house and picks up certain recyclables. And they also, so that's one of their services. The other service that I think is really terrific is they also will pick up like glasses, and they'll take those, or they'll pick up cell phones, or they'll pick up winter coats for different, no. They will not come here, no. Ridwell will be included as a service provider in this new bill if this becomes a law. So they will now be part of that system in terms of how things will evolve for them. That means they're going to have new restrictions and more transparency required. But our feeling about Ridwell is kind of mixed. On one hand, they are really doing a good job of disrupting the market, and they have forced the other waste companies to do better, which is a great thing. But I did query them about their social equity, because our board, we had to do a vote, and we voted no for them in terms of something they wanted to do at the state legislature, because I said, what are you doing about low-income families? How are you helping them? Nothing. So we had a little bit of a mixed feeling about them. But I do think overall they have been able to help push things forward. So that's a good thing. So a mixed answer on that. Yeah. Someone.
Like a lot of older people, I wear my clothes forever.
Yes.
But eventually, they do give out. And I understood that I can put used textiles, 20-year-old duvet covers and stuff, in a bag and take them to Goodwill. But it sounds like, is that
That's
something
a good thing
happening
do.
to them? Okay.
Yes. So King County and Seattle partnered with Goodwill on a program called Thread Cycle. So any damaged, old, and you have Thread Cycle been here. So anything that is can't be reused and resold goes to that, and then they can make those into rags or recycle the fibers and that kind of thing. So on B3 in your building, you have a Thread Cycle take-back bin. So you should do that for sure. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really good program. We want, if this other law that I'm talking about gets passed, it would help fund that.
I would like to see a system set up here so that, I mean, many of us don't have cars, and anyway, if you took things in the car, you would be not helping the
Right.
system at all.
Right.
And here in Horizon House, I think many people would be delighted to have a system whereby you knew where to take things in the building to do this, and and the whole system did, and also, of course, and we have moved toward having things that you could buy or use that don't that are fine. But
So what's an example of something that right now you're having trouble getting rid of?
well, one thing is we buy a lot of things, or at least I do. I buy things that are they have they're made of things that are that I'm sure need to be recycled.
So
And I think can be recycled, but I don't know how. And this is what we need, is
Right.
for all of us to get together and.
right. Well, Bill is leading the committee that's supposed to work on this.
Okay.
Here.
Okay, Bill.
No pressure on Bill, but if it's packaging, this new bill that hopefully will be a lot will take care of it.
Okay.
But there are products, it is true, that this bill will not address. A product that could be recycled, and they have a system here. You have a system here. So what do you do with a toaster? Where does the toaster go? Because a toaster could be recycled. No, I know, but I'm just asking him. Bill. That's a product. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, so it sounds like there is a system to take small appliances. Okay, so Bill's working on this to solve your problem.
okay.
Yeah.
Over here,
Is there anything?
Wait, one
Yeah.
over here. Let's do one over here. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm confused between the company Ridwell and the company Trex.
Ah,
In
yes.
Yakima, Trex was a really big thing, and I thought people really liked the decks they made.
Yeah.
I could have been wrong.
Oh, no, yeah, they're good.
And then how is that related to Ridwell? Are they the same thing?
No, and so Trex is the plastic lumber, and they are located in Reno, and then you can buy the Trex products at places like Home Depot. Ridwell is a door-to-door pickup service, and they come and they take batteries, styrofoam, lots of plastic bags.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they are door to door picking up stuff for consumers.
Okay.
You pay a monthly subscription.
Because in Yakima, we, at the senior centers, we put all these plastic bags, the kind that your thumb will do that, and they turned it in,
To Trex.
and they made a bench. When
Yes,
you collected
that's Trex.
500 pounds, they gave you a bench.
That's Trex.
But that's a totally different company than Ridwell.
Yeah.
Okay,
It can be a fundraiser for a school, so the school can collect and send it to Trex, and then they send you a bench, and you can use that as a fundraiser.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
By the
you.
way, it's 50% sawdust, 50% plastic. So they're using waste from a sawmill as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anything like your presentation that is in the Seattle Public Schools or the Washington State Schools?
Well, there is a program that's Green Schools, and there is a nonprofit that works with schools called, they changed their name. I'm going to say something Next Gen, like generation. So they work with schools to do, and here's the thing. I mean, a lot of kids grow up in Washington State knowing how to recycle. It is really a strong program in our schools. Composting, not so good. We do some work with high schoolers on policy. So we will have high schoolers testify on the bills. They are way better at testifying than we are. And the legislators listen to them way better than us. So we have, a lot of teachers will use legislative bills as a curriculum, and then they'll approach us and say, can we do that? We only can have like 1 or 2 kids because, you got to get all the other stuff dealt with on the bill, but it's very effective. But as you know, the school budget is in bad trouble right now. So the budget situation is grim. Yeah.
This has been fabulous. And I just want to remind people, if they don't remember, every recycling room has a couple posters in it. And it includes one poster that talks about where you can take styrofoam, your batteries, whether it's a big 9-volt or it's a hearing aid battery. Anyway, so we have a bunch of built-in options, including a giant collection for electronics.
Great.
And so on. So it's you're, how can I say, you're affirming and nurturing.
Preaching to the crowd.
Well,
Choir.
no.
Yeah.
No, on the contrary, I think you're just affirming that we're at least heading in the right direction.
Yeah, well, no, I do think you guys are a model. I wish there were more places like Horizon House that were doing this, because you all are definitely a model.
I have a question. You mentioned that we aren't supposed to use nonstick pans,
Correct.
and our kitchen is full of nonstick pans. So what do we do with those pans?
Okay, are you talking about the kitchen in your unit or the kitchen in the downstairs?
Oh, I don't know about their.
Okay, your own kitchen.
My kitchen.
Okay, so, and I should be clear, there's nonstick and there's nonstick. So nonstick, where it's that plastic coating, is what I'm talking about with the PFAS chemical. There is a nonstick that is a ceramic coating, and that's fine. So there are some that are okay. And then, of course, cast iron is fine, because cast iron is good.
What do you call it, coating? I've forgotten the name. Yeah, Teflon.
I don't know the year that it is, because they still sell the nonstick. You can still find the plastic nonstick, unfortunately. So unfortunately, you don't want to give it to Goodwill. Do not give it to Goodwill. In fact, we are going to go to Goodwill and other thrift shops and say, please stop accepting this list of 15 things. And we've been working on that list for the past 3 months. So it's going to be things like rice cookers that have that, pots and pans, fishing lures that are made of lead, things like that. So we have a list of 15 things we're working on. Unfortunately, you should send it to the landfill. I know, sorry. And as a group that works on getting things out of the landfill, it's very painful to say that. But there are just certain things that there's no good solution for, unfortunately. Yeah. Right now. Now, we're trying to get them banned. And in fact, Washington's working on banning PFAS for new ones. But the problem is we all have kitchens full of the stuff from before. Yeah. Okay, have I worn you all out?
Nope. One more question.
Okay, one more.
Prescription drug bottles.
Yes.
And the blister packs,
Yes.
because those are the bane of my existence. Not just the bottles themselves, which you have the amber ones and then the white ones,
Yes.
and then the lids.
Yes.
What do we do? with
Okay,
all that?
so those are. So the question is the bottles that your pills are coming in. They aren't actually garbage. So here's the thing. Those plastics are recyclable. But the problem is they're too small and they fall through at the recycling center. So that's why they're not allowed in the blue bin. But if you did a collection and worked out a deal with your company that comes and gets your stuff, if you had a box of just the one plastic, because there are different ones, but a single plastic that you have separated because everyone has put it in the right box, they would be able to recycle it. This is something that will be part of the new bill if it goes into effect, because that'll be something that they'll need to figure out what to do. I always tell people, don't put them in, when you have the drugs, leftover drugs, put your drugs in a Ziploc or something. Don't put those pill bottles in, because those are being incinerated. You're just incinerating plastic in that case. So what do we do with them? Well, right now you have to go to the landfill. She's right. They have to go to the landfill for now. But if you were to do a collection where they're separated and you have just the amber-colored, a box of just the amber-colored ones, they would be able to recycle them, strictly speaking. So you'd have to work with your company that picks up stuff here. Bill's not giving me a happy smile on that. But anyway, it is a project you can work on. And I think it will get fixed down the line. But right now, it's very frustrating. Yeah, one more, last one. Nope, nope, Bill's saying nope, nope, nope. Oh, yes or no? One more, okay. Last person. Yeah.
I remember reading or hearing that that scientists have discovered that there are certain microbes that are eating plastic, and that is something for the future.
Mm-hmm.
How soon will I live long enough for that future to come into existence?
Great question. Okay, so yes, there are at the lab scale, so small scale, there are some microbes that eat, and worms, that eat certain plastics. The problem is that at scale, so when you have it at a commercial scale, you need it to happen quickly. And the problem is they don't go very quick. So I would say it's a great idea, but it's probably not going to be possible in an American commercial situation. But like in a small, like an island situation where they can set it up and let it go, that could probably work because they aren't going to be in a rush. But the problem is if you go in these recycling facilities and look at the stuff coming in, you're like, they actually they made us all go and stand on the line and try to pull things. It was scary. I mean, it's fast and there's a lot. So what we really want to do is just get rid of the plastic. That's our goal. Let's get the plastic out of our lives. Let's go back to glass and metal and reusables and not even have it. But anyway, I would say not in my lifetime, most likely.
Well, thank you, Heather. You've given us a lot to think about, and obviously you're going to need some help next year with this, and we'll be following you and in your work. And I really appreciate your coming, and I just want to call attention also that Carol is outside with Carol Roach, my wife, with a very interesting piece on how to handle cleaning products without using plastic. So, outside. So, right out there. So, with that said, thank you all.